Welcome back to Open Line. We have with us Tim Takacs talking about elder law, taking your questions. We just heard from Reverend Fuzz. Thanks for calling in. Now we have Alfred. So let's just go right to the phones. Alfred. Hello, Alfred.
Yes.
What's on your mind?
Okay. Yeah, I have a question concerning abuse law. I've lived in my house for 25 years, and I'm concerned about a gentleman, neighbor, that keeps cussing and hollering at me. I fell the other day in my driveway, and this gentleman is mental. He's a real mental case, and he's cussing and hollering at me and things of that nature. I'm wondering if this abuse law that's supposed to have just went in effect pertains to me and him. We've never gotten along for 13 years. We've been at each other. But when I failed the other day, I tried to get him to help me. I looked at him and I'm like, can you help me get up? A gentleman was running down my street, jogging down my street, and he helped. I motioned him to come over, and he helped me get up. I'm wondering, I've been with the police department, the mayor's office, and everybody to try to get something done about this mental patient across the street from me.
Oh, man.
And he keeps doing it to me and my neighbors all the time. He cusses us. He's even pulled his pants down and showed us his thing.
Well, let's see about this. Thank you, Alfred.
Yeah, that's
what do you think here?
Well, what it kind of reminds me, or what it could be, is that he Alfred didn't mention anything at all about, is there family? Does the gentleman have family? He says he's been there for 13 years, that he's been there for 13 years, and this person is off and on, or whatever it is. And so what I start thinking about is maybe the abuse is not being, maybe Alfred is not the one that's being abused.
Right.
Maybe his neighbor is a dependent and neglected adult. And so maybe if we think about it in another way, is that I don't know that maybe when this guy was 25 years old he was like this, but when he starts talking about how he was taking off his clothes and doing whatever it is, then nobody's there apparently overseeing this man.
Right.
So he sounds like he's a dependent and a neglected adult. And so it could be that maybe that's what he and his neighbors need to report.
Interesting.
So then they come, and they investigate that gentleman. Don't assume that he's deliberately belligerent. He refers to him as a mental patient, so to speak, but obviously sounds like he has some cognitive issues. And whether that is mental illness, or something like Alzheimer's disease or whatever, or maybe a combination of all of that. Now that the gentleman, maybe he's gotten older, it's manifesting himself in that way. The worst thing would be is for him, not for Alfred, but for the neighbor, is that suppose that they don't. Okay, well, what happened to the neighbor? Well, we haven't seen him in a few days. Well, then the next thing you know, they find him and he's like dead in the garden or something like that.
Right.
And then it's like maybe an intervention is necessary. In other words, and maybe it's Alfred and his neighbors have to get together and say, is there family? If not, then we need to report this.
Yeah, to look at it from a different point of view.
That's just being good neighbors.
Right.
Maybe this guy hasn't been a good neighbor, but that doesn't mean Alfred and his neighbors can't be good neighbors. For someone that is maybe in need.
All right, and that's very interesting. That's again taking something and looking at it from a different way. What do you think is the number one thing people just neglect to do when they're planning? And what is a good age to start planning? I love the answer 2 years older is when you're elderly, 2 years older than you.
But that's not it. Yeah, it's 2 years older than me.
But you start planning when, and what are the things people neglect most?
Well, sure. When you think about it, is that okay, so you turn 18, you become an adult in this country. So the very first thing that everybody should do is say, okay, here's a durable power of attorney, and here's a healthcare power of attorney. Name somebody. maybe you don't have an estate, you don't have any money, but you could wind up in a hospital someday and they're going, okay, who's going to speak for this person?
Right.
And then you wind up in a conservatorship and nobody wants that.
Now, if you're married, does that person automatically speak for you, or do you have to name it?
You have to name, because
Really?
lots of married people out there would not name their spouse. And they're not necessarily the ones that are going through a divorce, right? So there's no assumption or presumption that that person can make decisions for you.
That's interesting. Okay.
Okay. Now, we do have a healthcare proxy statute, which is sort of a workaround for that. So, okay, you wind up in a hospital, and your spouse brings you in and says, well, my wife is, she had a stroke or something, but I don't know what's going on. Well, do you have a power of attorney or healthcare power of attorney? And you say, no, I don't have one. Then they'll say, well, they apply what's called a proxy statute and say, okay, since you brought her in, we're going to name you as her healthcare proxy. Okay. So that person will make decisions. So the healthcare community recognizes that person. But for legal and financial decisions, no. For money and property, those sorts of things, no. So first of all, when you become an adult, you get these legal documents in place. Certainly when you get married, then your legal status changes and you have obligations to somebody else. Certainly when you have children, or assuming you have children, then you have minor children, so you have obligations to them. So estate planning, planning needs to change as well. And of course, as we referred to just earlier, is that as you get older and or maybe your spouse dies or whatever it is, but as you get older and you develop a chronic illness, then certainly planning changes there as well. Right. Because now you're looking at the possibility of personal care needs, which the government doesn't pay for. So those are sort of the stages that you're looking at doing planning. And planning is the most important thing to do. Right. Just take control of it by doing it. And the way we talk about it is that, or at least I do, is that we do risk management. When you think about it, is that, okay, people that walk into our office that are already in a nursing home, what's at risk then? Their money, right? Right. So our focus might be there is that, okay, can this person qualify for TennCare or Medicaid? Well, if they can, fine. If they can't, okay. But for people that are walking into our office that have just maybe diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and has a spouse, then now we're talking about doing some really risk management. Try to project into the future what's likely to happen, and how do we plan for that? How do we put a plan in place so that we're always trying to stay ahead of where you are? And what do we hope for? That we never need it. Right. Maybe you'll be able to stay at home for the rest of your life and be well taken care of, and you'll have a great life, and then you'll die suddenly. I mean, but that's not planning. That's hoping. Right. So that's why we call it risk. In a way, it's about risk management. Risk management. Okay. Interesting. All right, we're going to take a break. Encourage you to call in. Do you have a situation you're dealing with, a question that you want to share that maybe would help others as well? There's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. There's the number. 7587. Yes. Take a break. Be back right after this.